Hello, Voices. My name is Joe Troy, and I'm a multi-award-winning voice actor, audio producer, and host of the VOICEOVER'S audio adventure podcast, a bi-weekly show where I learn about the voiceover and audio industry and share with you all of the stories, tips, and tricks along the way. Hello, Voices, and welcome to another adventure. But before I get into this adventure, I have an announcement to make. Since I started this pod, I have always had people reach out to me asking how to get jobs, how to find agents, etc. And as much as I've tried to help, I've never been able to help to the fullest. With that being said, I am compiling a list of new and old talent that would like to be put forward for upcoming projects. This is not an agency. I repeat, this is not an agency. Simply a list of talented people who may not have representation and who want to work on cool projects. If you are interested, please make sure you have a demo or audio to showcase your skills. This can be professional or self-made. If any projects come across my radar that I think you may be a good fit for, I'll holler. For more info, please have a look at the show notes where you'll find a link and everything you need to know. Now, back to the episode. Throughout this podcast so far, I've spoken with radio presenters and radio producers. But I thought to myself, I haven't really spoken with anybody who works on the actual station sound itself. Now, some people, when they think of radio, they think of jingles when they think of identity. But it's so much more. As a VO, I've worked with certain radio stations, but not others. But why? This is where today's adventure will hopefully educate us all on the world of imaging. What is it? Why it exists and how to be a part of it as a VO or even producer. To find out more, I got the chance to speak with Venton, the founder of Little Monster, specializing in the creation of audio imaging production and sound design for radio and podcasts. Let's go.
I'm Venton, founder and director of Little Monster Media. We are an audio branding company working specifically in radio imaging, podcasting, and live event audio.
What is imaging?
Haha, it's funny you say that because I did a little video on this recently because it is the first question that anybody asks me is like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, kind of audio imaging or radio imaging, audio branding. And they're like, oh, so you're the jingle guy. I'm not the jingle guy. No, I'm not the jingle guy. Jingles is part of it and can be part of it, but it's more, the way I sell it at a party or something like that is when you listen to the radio, the bits in between the songs that isn't the DJ talking. So that's the kind of the most simple way I can put it. So the identity, the sound of a radio station or a brand is how I would sum it up.
How do you come about that? Like, how do you go about making audio identity for a radio station? And what are the assets, so to speak, that make that imaging up?
So it's a very good question. You'd start with a brief. So you'd start kind of like some stations already have it in place to an extent. So, you know, at Capital, everybody knows how Capital sounds. Contrasting it to, say, classic FM, they sound completely different. Their identity is different. The character is different. And that comes from, obviously, the music they play. But if you took out the music and just played all of their imaging or their branding, they'd sound radically different as well. So it comes down to music selection, sound design, whether it's used or not, and what type of sound design, and crucially, the voiceover. So tone, style, read, all of that sort of stuff. And you kind of put them all in a melting pot and kind of come up with a final kind of product using all of those different elements that represents the music and the brand that the client's trying to portray.
And how did you get into imaging? Was it something that you found out one day and was like, oh, I could do that? Or like, how did it come to where you are now?
Kind of. It was a bit of a happy accident. So I went to university and did a music tech degree, but I wasn't actually I was well behind. I was really behind people. There were people there who'd done BTECs and things, and I turned up on day one, and we were in the studio, and everybody was talking about logic, and in my head I was like, logic as in like, logical thinking or something. Like I had no idea it was even a music program. That's how far behind I was. So I kind of managed to get through university and kind of obviously learned a lot through it, but was by no means the finished article. And I hadn't really come across imaging as such. I'd always thought I love listening to the radio, and I love the stuff, as I called it at the time, the stuff in between the songs and things. And I thought there must be people that make that, but I didn't really kind of know too much about it. And then I got a job at GWR Bristol, as it was, working as a Black Thunder, so on the street team, driving around handing out stickers and things. And the reason they kind of got me in was they saw on my CV when I applied for kind of casual work that I had a tech degree, a music tech degree. The street team kind of controller, she was called Anne Marie, said, "Oh, our station producer, he's kind of like completely overwhelmed at the minute. He could really do with an extra pair of hands. Would you be interested in kind of going to have a chat to him, because we can see you've got it on your CV?" I was like, "Yeah, definitely." So that person ended up being Ben Marks, who anybody in the imaging world will know Ben. He's an absolute genius. He's still at Real World now, and he was at Pure Tonic, and he's done some amazing work over the years. And he was the station producer at the time. So he sat me down and said, this is what it all is, and kind of walked me through what imaging was and all the different terminology over kind of 2-3 hour period. And then I left the room thinking, whoa, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be like this guy. And that's how it started, really, right from that day.
Where else would imaging be apart from radio?
Where else would it be?
Yeah.
So nowadays, podcasts, I think, is probably the closest kind of relative, if you like. A lot of people that have worked in radio production, kind of even down the programming side, have moved into podcast production because there's so much similarity, creating shows and things, basically, more on demand, isn't it? Podcasting,
Yeah.
on demand radio shows, really. So likewise with the audio branding, podcasts benefit. They don't need, but they benefit. I think they need, but they certainly benefit from an identity, a character, a brand, just like a radio station. So, your intros, outros, music selection, if there's any sound design in there, that's kind of all imaging, really. So when I'm working on that sort of stuff, I reference it as podcast imaging, because that's to me is what it is. But people also refer to it as podcast branding and podcast production and things like that. The problem, kind of my opinion on it, and it's very subjective, but my opinion is I refer it to it as podcast imaging because of the radio imaging background. And when someone says podcast branding to me, that could mean the graphical side as well. So the artwork and things like that. So I think there's better separation using the word imaging. But again, it's subjective. That's just my opinion.
I think it's a good thing for everyone now, that because I was going to ask you in terms of how big is the pool for radio imaging, but with podcast imaging now has kind of blown it out the water, where you possibly could have so much work with that as well. Would you agree or disagree?
Oh yeah, hugely. The radio imaging pool is actually very small now. I remember having a conversation at the Audio Production Awards last year with a few colleagues. Chris Nichol of VOICEOVER'S and Sam Parker of VOICEOVER'S were there as well. And we were saying, where's the next generation of imaging producers coming from? Because it used to be, my route and Chris's route was slightly different, being from New Zealand. But, my route of going to a local station and working your way through and progressing, it doesn't exist anymore because the local stations aren't there. Community stations, of course, and there are some kind of people that are on the radar, but it's not as, I don't want to say easy, but it's not as accessible as it was, because there's less seats, if you like, less jobs. Whereas with podcasting, it means audio producers of any level can start their own podcast. They can start doing their own branding and using bits and pieces and kind of just being creative with it, which is brilliant, really, because there's no limitations. And I think, podcasting is a real benefit to everybody in the audio production world, for sure.
From a VO's perspective, I know when I started, it took me maybe a couple of years into my career to come across imaging, because obviously what imaging is once you know what imaging is, but you don't know it's called imaging. How would you say it differs from commercial work, both from your standpoint and a voiceover standpoint?
I think from my standpoint, it's a lot more, I think efficient is a good word, because quite often in imaging, the length of copy is very short. So a sweeper or an ID, and even within a 10 to 15 second ID, the actual voiceover could be 4 or 5 words, and then you populate it with drops and things like that. Whereas commercial is obviously 20 to 30 seconds as a kind of standard, and carries the narrative. So I think in commercial production, voiceover is very much the narrator, the narrative, carrying the story, beginning, middle, and end. Whereas in imaging, it could almost be the flip side. You could have the kind of statement, so station name and station tagline, but the actual narrative could be carried by music, vocal drops, things like that. So kind of the amount of copy that a voiceover has to work with in imaging can be a lot less, which I think means it's a lot more difficult, actually, in my head. But then again, I've never made, well, I have made a few commercial pieces of production, but it's not my forte. So I don't want to sound like I'm doing anyone a disservice, because I don't mean it that way at all. But because of how efficient you need to be when voicing imaging, I think it is difficult in comparison.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
What makes a good imaging voice?
Personality and uniqueness, I think, because I think, and it's difficult because they're not things you can necessarily learn either. And I speak to an awful lot of voiceovers about kind of getting into voicing imaging and things, and I'll always give as much advice as I can, but you are somewhat limited depending on your voice, because every radio station wants to sound different. And every radio station, certainly kind of CHR stations or big national stations, they want to sound different. They want the next voiceover. So, for example, a Radio 1 wouldn't take an established
voice or
voiceover that's been around for a long time. Yeah, they wouldn't. They because their brand is youth, and they would lean into the kind of younger side of the market, people coming through that they can kind of train and use in that way. Whereas other stations look at it differently. Capital obviously had Howard Ritchie for so long, world-renowned, world-class voice. But his voice is so unique. So you know straight away that, that's Howard Ritchie. So it's almost like you need to kind of focus on your own tone of voice and your own uniqueness, and getting the best out of that you can, I think.
Do you receive many demos, and do you find them useful?
I get quite a few. I do get quite a few. Not really, if I'm being brutally honest, not really useful. 2 reasons for that. One is I'd say 99% of the work we do is for radio stations that already have a voice selected. So if we're working for the BBC or somebody like that, they'll send us the voice. Or we'll use presenters, particularly on BBC stations. Presenters voice a lot of the trails and things. So I never really have to go out and find a voice for projects, even podcast ones that generally like, oh, we've got so-and-so lined up, and, use that voice. On occasion, podcasts will reach out and say, they want some branding, and can you help us find a voice? And then I will generally go on to kind of voiceover, professional voiceover websites. But I tend to go on databases, things like voiceovers.co.uk, and there was another one. Oh, I can't remember who it was. It's going to bug me now. There's a couple kind of the major ones that I use, just because it's time efficient. So rather than listening through to individual demos of, say, 100 producers or 100 voiceovers, sorry, that's going to take a lot of time. Whereas I can go into a database and kind of narrow the search using keywords. That said, when I do get sent demos, I do listen to them. And if it's a voice that I think actually there might be something on my radar in the near future, I park them in a folder. So I have got a folder of them. And LinkedIn as well. If I need a specific voice now, I'll jump onto LinkedIn and put looking for a voice, say, I don't know, 30 plus kind of South London accent or something like that. And then generally people will kind of contact you and send stuff. So it's that filtration.
It's interesting you say that, because I have an imaging demo. and I decided to make one, a couple years ago. But I don't actually know if I've booked any jobs through that imaging demo or just word of mouth or
Yeah.
commercial demo. Like it's really hard to know where you've booked jobs from. Sometimes you just get random emails like, would you like to do this because you've worked with this person before, kind of thing. So yeah, I get people asking me all the time,
absolutely,
what kind of demos do I need? And to be honest, I believe you only need one. Like you need one demo that kind of shows what you can do, and that's it. I think obviously if you want to specialize in imaging, which as you've made clear, it's very small, and most stations have their voices already, so it's kind of like, is it really worth your time and money to just focus on one, imaging reel or not? But yeah. It's an interesting question I like to ask, especially people in your position, because you must get so many demos like on a daily basis.
Yeah, I do get quite a few. Yeah, I do get quite a few. But yeah, it's difficult because it's a really tough nut to crack, imaging. And, it's not to say that it can't be done, because there's, more and more kind of community stations and things popping up that need voices and might look at kind of new voices and things. But is that going to be enough to earn a living on those rates?
Yeah.
Probably not. Could you look abroad at America? Yeah, I mean, we made a voiceover demo recently for Dave Wartnaby for the American market, tailored to the American market. And I need to check in with him and see how that's doing for him. But that's solely focused on the American stations. But it's more of it's not his sole focus. It's more of an additional thing that he's invested in. So it's difficult. But I think you're right. Like one killer demo. If you had a demo, a commercial demo there with some youth sounding ad copy on there, and I heard it and I thought that might be quite good for imaging, then you're still kind of ticking that box, if that makes sense. You don't necessarily need to go and make an imaging specific demo. I'm doing myself out of work here.
Because sometimes I feel like the imaging demo is a bit distracting from your other stuff. Because if I'm sending you 4 or 5 different demos showing you everything I can do, sometimes it's a bit confusing, I think, personally. That's why I kind of hold off from sending the imaging one.
I totally agree. You've hit on something there, actually. It's very important, whether you're a producer or a voiceover or anybody who works in audio, it's very important to tailor what you're sending somebody to what they do. So, for example, if you're emailing a commercial producer, do not send them an imaging demo, because they're not going to care. And if anything, it's going to flag to them, oh, actually, you don't know that I don't do imaging. You're just sending me everything. So it's like when you kind of reach out to people on LinkedIn, the more kind of you show that you've actually done your research and you're contacting them for them, not
copy paste
as a one of many.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think you're more likely to get a response. Anybody that sends me a demo or an email that has clearly researched what Little Monster is and what we do, I always respond. Always. I've made a point of it every time, because I think they've taken the time to research me and research Little Monster. I'm more than happy to take the time to respond and critique and feedback. If I'm getting demos where it's like, hi, Little Monster Media, seeing that you're doing something or other that we're not doing, or something to do with software or something, it's just like, I just bin it straight away.
Yeah.
So
noted.
I
know. No, if there's somebody out there that wants to do what you're doing on the production side, what would you say is a good place to start?
Oh, that's hard now. I would research radio imaging and companies that create radio imaging on Google, and go onto their websites, learn more about what they do. Because the reason for that is you're more likely to find imaging to listen to by doing that than going to a radio station website. Radio station website's not going to have imaging on it. So you need to find the companies and the producers that make it, and listen to it. SoundCloud's great for that too, actually. And once you do that, start looking at their websites. VOICEOVER'S is a great one. I've mentioned them before. They've got loads of kind of resources and tools for people that want to learn imaging. I think they do their masterclass, which is geared towards people coming into the industry. Likewise, we give away free effects and bits and pieces on our website as well. So once you can go onto these websites and download these tools, you can just start making stuff.
Yeah.
Just start making stuff in a DAW. So digital audio workstation. I know you know that, but other people listening might not. Whether it's Pro Tools, Reaper, Ableton, whatever it may be, or Audition, of course. Get yourself a computer with a DAW, download some elements, and then you don't even need VoiceOver to start with. You could just voice it yourself, get a microphone, voice it yourself, or even voice it on your phone if you're starting, and just some sort of audio to play around with. And if you like it and you enjoy it, reach out to those people at those companies. Email me, email Chris and Sam, email Adam and Tom at Imaging Blueprint. And, there's a whole list of companies that these days that make imaging for big stations, small stations worldwide. And one thing I would say about the imaging community is everybody is more than happy to help. They're a really nice bunch of people. So if you show willing and interest, and again, show that you've done a bit of research, if you email these people and say, can you take a listen and help? I guarantee you they will come back and say, yeah, absolutely. And that's how it starts. And then you just develop your sound, develop your skill set, develop relationships with people. And then next time one of those companies needs somebody, or whether that's from the company growing or somebody leaving or whatever it might be, you're there. You're already in front of mind. You've already shown them that you've got the skill set, and they don't need to go hunting through however many demos because they know you're there, and then you'll get a call. That would be my approach now.
Well, Adam, thank you for your time. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people have as well. So prepare yourself. I always say, when you give information like this, prepare yourself for a load more emails coming your way. So prepare for that. But,
that's fine.
Yeah, thank you for shedding some light on imaging. Definitely was very useful. And obviously, I'll put all your contact. Now, what did I learn from today's conversation? 1. Radio imaging seems to not be what it used to be, with the lack of stations being around and also the rise of podcasts. That being said, there is an ever-growing need for imaging for podcasts, so producers out there, bear that in mind. 2. My voiceovers out there. Same goes for us, really. Don't enter this to think that imaging is going to be the gold mine for you. It's one of many niches in the world of video, but please don't get obsessed with it. Radio stations usually change their branding every few years, so once a voice is locked in, that's it for a while. And finally, if you have a demo already, then fair enough. But if you are thinking of updating or recording a new one, I probably wouldn't if I already have a commercial demo. It's just not worth the time or money. When producers listen to you, they're not necessarily listening for what you can do on imaging, they just want to hear your sound. So a commercial demo will be sufficient. And as always, good luck, guys. Thanks, Adam, for taking time out today and sharing your experience and allowing me to learn more. Definitely go check out his work. I'll include everything in the show notes, as well as some honorable shout outs in the world of imaging who I've worked with before and who Adam actually gave a shout out to during his interview. As always, thank you everyone for listening, and be sure as always to like and share the episode with a friend. Catch you next time for another adventure. Bye.